Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out to be with us this morning, this afternoon. And we want to thank the press for responding to our call to cover this event. I'm Louisville Ky, president of the Louisville Branch NAACP. With me to my left, we have Mr. Raymond Burse, who's the first vice president of the NAACP. We have with us parents. Taryn Bell, if you're back. Mitzi Wilson. Tanisha Booker. Jennifer Pierce. And Jordan Hearn. We have someone else coming in with us. Gonna come in.
Keep going, Ryan. Keep going. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going.
Almost 2 years ago, the Louisville Branch NAACP took a leap of faith when we endorsed a historic shift in the Jefferson County Public Schools student assignment plan. It was a difficult decision for the NAACP, which knew it would lead to resegregation. The change was sold on the promise of several things. One, improving the overall academic performance of the district. Two, allowing students in predominantly Black West Louisville to attend schools close to home or further away. Three, dramatically increasing resources in schools in the new West Louisville choice zone. But the NAACP now knows it didn't have all the information it should have had to make this decision. The NAACP didn't know about the district's plan to implement the new assignment plan and revise school start time at the same time. JCPS is still reeling from that change as in search of a solution as late bus times continue to plague the district month after and undoubtedly hamper students' performance. JCPS now wants to end transportation for students at 27 magnet and 9 traditional schools in a move the NAACP thinks could be equally climatic, discriminatory, and lead to even more segregation. 16 magnet schools and 3 traditional schools are in the district that encompasses the choice zone. We believe such a plan will lead to further segregation of schools in West Louisville and deny opportunities for high-quality education to Black, brown, and poor students who cannot afford private transportation. We are willing to work with the district, but we will not hesitate to act in the best interest of Black, brown, and poor students if action is taken that what we determine is detrimental to their education. To that end, the Louisville Branch NAACP has adopted a resolution which is in the press packet. A letter and the resolution addressed to the superintendent and each JCPS board members of education was dropped off at the Van Hoos Educational Center today by me personally before this conference began. The NAACP is concerned about the education of young people in our community and have adopted the resolution to make certain we remain true to the mission. We will now hear from parents who will tell how their children and they are adversely impacted. My left was Ms. Booker.
PTA president at Central High School. I also have a sophomore, my daughter's a sophomore at Central High School. My daughter does not use JCPS transportation. We take her and we pick her up. However, over 1,000 students, if option one, where there's no transportation in magnet schools, over 1,000 students at Central High School will not be able to attend. 57% of students will not be able to attend if option one is chosen. And you know, it affects more than just the kids that ride the bus. It affects everyone because if there's less students, there's less funding. And then they can't pay for the teachers that are over these magnets, the medical magnet, the nursing magnet, the veterinary magnet, and then sports clubs, band, track, basketball. These teachers are let go, then the teachers, the kids that are still there are still suffering because they don't have these things they went there for. So then they're gonna, you know, maybe go look at other schools for the programs that they want. So it literally affects everybody. And even option two, where there's the hubs, parents still, half of our students will not be able to come to Central, and the other half of those students can get to the hub if it's less than 5 miles, and the other half cannot. And you know, this is just, to me, it's not the right solution. In riding the TARC, it goes from 20 minutes to 1 hour and 41 minutes is the length of time that these students will be on the TARC riding to school. That's to school and that's from school. That's in the dark, that's in the rain, that's on the sidewalks, that's when they're walking by themselves, that's in unsafe neighborhoods. And I mean, I can see students not even going to school if their parents cannot take them or pick them up because it's not safe. It's not safe everywhere. And this is not the right solution. This is detrimentally affecting our kids, and this is not the right solution.
The sophomore. Firstly, just to piggyback off what Tanisha said, it's a major safety concern. My daughter does, I drive her to school in the morning. In the afternoon, she does catch the bus. It's a safety issue because she's never she's never rode the TARC before. Having to ride the TARC, she would have to cross the Greyhound bus station. And I feel like there's just all different type of people that are in that community. My daughter's never rode the TARC before. Also, these employers don't care that you have to get your kids to and from school. So while I may be able to get her to school in the morning, in the afternoon, I'm not gonna get grace to say I have to leave and pick my daughter up, drop her off at home and come back. So safety issues, and also just a lot of parents, I see that they'll lose their job because of this issue. We have to choose between taking our kids to school, picking them up, dropping them off, and our livelihood. So this drastically affects the parents and the students as well.
The Fern Creek High School district, in my district, there's not even a magnet program. So my son's busted his butt all of his years to get where he wanted to be, to try to go and be in Central's nursing program. There's not even a nursing program in my district. So y'all take that out of there. What is my son supposed to do? Like put what he wants to do on hold and go do something else that he doesn't want to do? That don't sit right with me, that he doesn't have the same options that other kids have just because there's not a magnet school in my district. Piggybacking off of what they said, I work at Ford Motor Company. I cannot bring my kid to school every day, and whatever. The line is not going to stop at work just so I can bring my kid back and forth to school. And my son's education shouldn't have to suffer because I work and I have a job. There's single parents and there's only parents. I'm an only parent. There's a big difference between being a single parent and an only parent. No one else shows up. If I don't show up, no one else shows up. So the TARC situation, if that ends up being it, they did the math on my kids where I live at or whatever, it's 100 stops. My son has to walk 1.2 miles to the TARC stop, and then he has to ride 100 stops between where they pick him up and Central High School. That is insane. My son is autistic. I mean, that should just crazy. And then who's responsible for the safety of those kids on that TARC bus? Or, you know, the hub thing really ain't gonna work for you either, just because unless they're gonna do a CEP or something after that for the parents that have a job. I mean, what can you really do in that situation? So it's kind of like my kid's gonna have to suffer so much if they go through with this and like don't redraw the district lines or don't do anything else. And my son is like used to what he does at Central. He loves going to Central, and switching up an autistic kid's whole schedule is really, 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 really hard on him, on me, on everybody. So I just really hope you all consider that these kids are really gonna suffer if y'all go through with this option. For real, for real.
JCPS. I have a daughter who is in Duval. I have one that is in Shawnee, and then I have one that is also in Whitney Young. Now my son in Whitney Young, he has been there since kindergarten. Come next year, he may not be able to go because I do not have transportation. I am a low-income family, so I do not have the transportation to get him to school and home. He's already taken an hour to go 1.3 miles down the road on the buses that are JCPS is providing right now. I'm just worried about next year because I might have to send him to the school that is right next to my house, just because when he has a behavior issue or when they let out early, anything like that, I have to come get him. I need to be close by. So having JCPS take away the magnet and the traditional schools transportation, it's affecting these kids, because my son is now worried that he's not going to be able to go to school with his friends. He may not, since kindergarten, he may not be able to see them next year. Who knows if in middle school, when they go to all these different schools, if he even is going to know what they're doing next year or anything, because again, come 5th grade, he can't graduate with his friends that he's been with since kindergarten. My son that's in middle school right now in Shawnee, he's walking to school and walking home from school because of the buses right now. I can only imagine what's going to happen next year with him walking and stuff. He's already saying he doesn't even want to go to school anymore. A kid that wanted to go every single day, he doesn't want to go anymore because he's tired of walking to school. He walks to school in rain, snow, sleet. It doesn't matter, 100-degree weather. He's been walking every single day to and from school. And then my daughter with Duval, with the park, with her being in pre-K, it's hard because I have to take the TARC. And with me taking the TARC, I'm literally every single day, at least 4 or 5 hours on the bus. It depends if it doesn't show up at the NIA Center in time. I have to turn back around because I'm not going to be at home in time to get her from school back and then get my other kids from the bus. So it's going to cause a lot of headache, a lot of stress on families. We're already worried about jobs and the education. My daughter has missed a lot of school just because of me having to take the TARC. Like I said, if it doesn't show up at a certain time, I have to turn back around to take her home because of the time frame it's going to take me to be out. I'm not going to be able to get my kids in time.
Thank you.
At Shawnee High School, and to piggyback off the other parents, first of all, my child did not catch the school bus, but there will be a problem with if they do take away the school buses, and the safety issues with the school buses when they take them off. Like they said, I live in the Portland area, so if they don't have no buses for the kids to get to school down in that area, they out of luck, and the parents can't get to work. They can't miss days of work to get to the school to get their kids. And I just think that they need to keep the buses going. Don't stop because your child, our kids want to go to a traditional school, our magnet school. They wanted to learn. What happened to the teachers, the people want your kids to come and learn? Now y'all gonna take away that from the kids of trying to learn to make something out of themselves. So please keep the buses going. Do not stop.
We'll now hear from Mr. Raymond Burse, who will go over several pieces of legislation that's pending in Frankfurt that we are
For
concerned.
JCPS in terms of no transportation for magnet and traditional school students as a part of a larger plan of activities that are happening across the state and in Kentucky General Assembly. There are several bills pending that go directly addressing the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's Senate Bill 6 and House Bill 9, which most of you have heard about, which targets diversity, equity, and inclusion in colleges and universities, which basically outlaw, if passed and enacted, would outlaw diversity, equity, and inclusion in those individuals. Senate Bill 93, which you don't hear much about, it would target diversity in K through 12 public schools. So it's not only talking about higher education, but also talking about elementary and secondary education. A bill that is unbelievable is Senate Bill 61, which would eliminate limited early voting in Kentucky. And as you know, we only now have, 2 or 3 days of early voting. This bill would eliminate if enacted. One to which I don't fully understand, and that's Senate Bill 80, which would allow, would not allow an ID issued by an institution of higher education to continue to be used as an acceptable ID for voting purposes, but would allow a hunting license to be used. House Bill 2, which everybody should have on their radar, if passed and enacted, would allow a vote on a constitutional amendment to the Kentucky Constitution, which would allow the legislature to use public funds to fund private, religious, and charter schools when currently they're not adequately funding public schools across the state. The current budget, which is being debated and now in a conference committee, it does not fully fund transportation for schools, and go one step further, it doesn't provide any funding for textbooks. No money for textbooks, but we want to do all these things in terms of making those funds available. These efforts that are afoot in Frankfurt around DEI and others are designed to turn back the clock, require forward-thinking and acting leadership willing to speak for that which is right and just, which create opportunities for all. If you do not speak and act now, where will this state be in a few years? Where will this community be in a few years? And I say to those individuals, your silence and comfort may make you feel okay today, but what about the future of this community? What I've talked about should be unacceptable to all in this community. And the NAACP is calling on the Louisville business community, Mayor Greenberg, Greater Louisville Inc., Impetus, and the Kentucky Chamber to speak. It is now time for you all to speak and speak loudly and tell us where you stand. In the aftermath of George Floyd's killing and the Breonna Taylor killing, a lot of these individuals were able to, put signs in their windows, made public statements and all that. Now, what you did then, you really believe in, now is the time to do it. Again, I call you out. Louisville business community, Mayor Greenberg, Greater Louisville Inc., Impetus, and the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. It's time to come to the party and fight for this state.
Have with us the president and CEO of the Louisville Urban League in the person of Mr. Lyndon Pryor. Lyndon.
Briefly speak to the issue of busing and the proposed changes before the board that are going to come before the board. And I just want to say this off top. This is an issue that obviously is being confronted by JCPS, but this is not a JCPS issue. This is a Louisville issue. This is a community issue. Were it not for the historic segregationist policies of this city, we might not be here. Were it not for the legacy of redlining and discrimination that have deepened poverty in our community, we might not be here. Were it not for policies and practices that literally prevent people from being able to drive across this city, we might not be here. So all of these things, were it not for disinvestment and a lack of infrastructure investment in transportation over decades, we might not be here. All of these things work together to get us to the problem that we have today. And unfortunately, JCPS is saddled with the burden of trying to figure that out for the students and families that they serve. They unfortunately have to choose between what are quite frankly a bunch of very bad options. And so I just want to say that, I think we all can acknowledge that we can all see that. That said, JCPS's job is to do the best and most equitable thing for the students and families that they serve. And unfortunately, this proposal does not meet that bar. Taking away buses for magnet schools is going to create incredible disparities, further disparities within JCPS for the students who are most impacted by poverty, historical discrimination, and disinvestment. And we can't have that. Personally, I worked alongside polio and members of the district a couple of years ago to push for a change in the student assignment plan. A big part of that change was to make magnet schools more accessible and more equitable. And this policy, unfortunately, will completely undo a whole lot of the work that was done and a whole lot of the things that parents and students actually believed in when we went through that process. And so my ask of the district, of the school board, is for them to hold on making the decision and to actually think about and explore other solutions and other ways that they might be able to get this done. We know that changes have to be made, and I am telling you that I understand fully that those changes are not going to be ones that everybody likes. I think we can understand that, but it doesn't have to be this. We can find better options, we can do better things, but we just have to take the time to really explore those options. So my plan in working with my team is hopefully to be able to present to the superintendent as well as to the board here in the coming days some options and some alternatives for them to consider that might make potential busing solutions more equitable, more accessible, and less harmful to the kids who are already there. Thank you.
Are there any questions coming from the media?
Some of the, have all of the parents spell their first and last names for us? Or are they in the packets?
They're not in the packet.
They're not in the packets.
If you will type those names and run them off, and we can give it to the media, so they will have it in their packet.
But I think the district, I haven't spoken to them about this in a while, but I think the district may argue that in order to make transportation work for the vast majority of students, some students may need to have their, those opportunities reduced in order to make it work for a broader swath of students. How would you respond to those, that kind of rationale?
I think that, as Lyndon stated, we're going to all be willing to work and look at options or other options. Whether that one will be included or not, we're willing to. I don't think that anyone has a magical solution at this point. But a willingness of the community, organizations, and school administrators, we need to look at options.
Good question. But what the question begs is, you can't make a decision without all of the information and all of the facts. At this point, JCPS doesn't have all of the facts. There's an audit mandated as a result of the fiasco that took place last fall. The contract they've signed with the company doing that audit is not to report back until October. That is supposed to tell us in part what went wrong and what was the problem. So if we don't have all of the information, all of the facts, we cannot make an informed decision. And JCPS is missing all of the facts at this point.
The student assignment plan and making magnets more accessible, a part of the selling point for families. What are your thoughts now as the community supported the district in that, and now they're doing something that potentially will undo all of that work?
My thoughts are that's going to be really painful, right? And it's going to create or deepen distrust for the district. I think there were a lot of people who came to the table in good faith and said, hey, let's do this. Certainly the student assignment plan needed to change. It hadn't been changed in 30 plus years or whatever the number was. And so it needed to change, and community invested. They showed up, they gave their thoughts, they gave their opinions, they worked with the district to come up with a plan that they thought was going to be reasonable and accessible. And that happened, and it has started to work. My understanding is that, you know, it was doing well, that the numbers were increasing in terms of diversity around the magnet school programs and others. And so to do this, which, you know, potentially could incredibly rip all of that away from a lot of those kids, is going to be deeply painful for a lot of parents and students. And so we've got to keep that in mind, because it's not just about this decision, but if you break that bond of trust with your families, what does that mean for your ability to foment goodwill moving forward?
The community and get community feedback before presenting a plan. I'm not aware of any broad public meetings or hearings that have taken place. I'm wondering if, you know, with the Urban League or with maybe the NAACP or with the parent-teacher organizations, if the district has directly consulted with your groups to get feedback from parents.
We have discussed it at a PAC meeting, with JCPS PAC meeting as a parent council, but as of JCPS hearing from us, no, we have not been asked or anything.
And we've also asked various school board members. And a plan has, and I talked to Dr. Pulliam yesterday, and a final plan has not been presented. Currently planning on introducing it at the next board meeting on March 26th, and possibly even taking a vote on it then.
Do you think that gives the public enough opportunity?
No. I don't even want you to ask that question. No.
This transportation plan, if it were to go through, what are some of the long-term impacts you guys think it will have if it were to go through and stay in place?
An entire demographic of students who won't be able to attend magnet schools, right? Like, at least as I understand it, right? Like, if you're not going to bus kids to magnet schools, you are essentially cutting off those who do not have transportation access to go to those schools and programs. And that is, I mean, JCPS for as long as I've been aware, has lifted up their magnet school programs as some of the greatest things that they do. And so now you have a swath of kids who, for no other reason than they don't have transportation, are not going to be able to access those incredibly great programs. And so that is, I think, the long-term effects. And so what does that mean for kids' opportunities to have the choice that JCPS has promised?
And also, you have the possibility of Central, Johnson, Carter schools closing because students cannot get there.
And I think you also have to look at that in the context of this environment in which we operate in. So when you talk about the bills that are pending in the legislature, you know, there is in fact a bill for a resolution to study JCPS to break up the school district. If in fact there is no opportunity for transportation for students from magnet school and traditional schools, we're going to further segregate schools in the District 1 area. If we do that, what we're basically doing is creating two separate societies, one in West Louisville and one the rest of the place. The question is, if that happens, do the resources come? So when I talk about the community coming up and the business community now talking, we're talking about the long-term future of this community and what takes place. One of our most important resources that we have now is the young people. We need to educate them and create opportunities for them. But if we're going to have legislation and action on a local basis to do that, in our meeting here at the NAACP, we talked about what is being proposed in terms of option 1 on transportation, in effect, gives to some legislators what they've been looking for. That is to separate West Louisville from the rest of Louisville, and we can't afford that.
Mr. Cunningham, you said that the NAACP took a leap of faith when it decided to endorse the student assignment plan in 2020, I think, 2020.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, 2022. And you said that you didn't have all the information. Are you saying that if you had information about how the bell times would have to change and the the stress on the transportation system that would have occurred, are you saying that the NAACP may not have endorsed the student assignment plan?
That's true.
Okay. Kept that from you deliberately?
I would want to prejudge the district in that regard.
Meeting to vote is talking about the transportation plan. This is, I believe they rolled this out and announced this a few weeks ago. Why now do you guys decide to kind of roll this out and let them know, hey, we are against this?
I didn't quite.
So the timing of it, why now as opposed to when they first initially rolled out the new transportation plan? Are you guys making this decision in their announcement that you guys are against the transportation?
We put in the 8 pages that concluded in, here are the options which we will consider, okay? I think that in terms of our timing is based on when our membership brings the issue to us that we respond. And so the reason we're here today is we want to make certain that next Tuesday doesn't create a catastrophe for this community.
A question for you, sir. You mentioned Frankfurt and the legislation, and you bring up a timeline. Do you have any concerns when you think about that bill to split up JCPS and then the district, a week or two before the legislation session ends, deciding to make that easier?
I think we're very, very concerned about it. I think what you have to do, and Linda talked about looking long term, when things happen, they begin to conflict together, and you have to see them in that context. And the context is, there is in fact, from Frankfurt, and everybody, is that Louisville is under attack by the Kentucky legislature. There's no doubt about that. We've had a bill introduced to study breaking up JCPS, and that Republican caucus was pretty clear in terms of what he wanted to see happen. And when you have all these things coming together, you got to respond and say enough is enough, and then we're going to protect our community. We're going to protect our young folks. We're going to ensure that they get a full and complete education in terms of what's available. But you won't need to have a legislation study splitting JCPS if you have a plan like what was being proposed, at least option 1, because schools in West Louisville would become, again, very, very segregated. We got away from that back in the 70s and the 80s, and reluctantly, or because we thought it was in the best interest of students in getting resources in West Louisville, we have signed on to the choice plan. Had we known that he was going to, a year later with the implementation of the choice plan, change start times, and then come back and say, oh, we're going to also change transportation, we wouldn't have supported it. I can tell you that for a fact.
With the 4 options JCPS currently has laid out for what busing or transportation could look like next year, do you think they're currently operating with equity in mind for students?
I think that it's hard to say, right? Like, I think that here's what I would say. I don't deny or believe that the administration over there does not want equity for their students. I've seen too much evidence that they are trying to work towards those ends in lots of different ways. What I do think, though, is, as I said earlier, they are faced with basically a slew of very bad options, and they are trying to figure out what is the best one to go with. And unfortunately, I think if they are choosing option 1, that they are probably making the worst of those decisions. I also think that they are not considering other alternatives that are out there. Maybe that's because they haven't talked about them all. They haven't talked with community about what those options could be. But I think that if they took the time to say, let's step back and let's look at this in a much more thoughtful way, in a much more comprehensive way, that hopefully they could come to a better resolution. So I do believe that they intend to uplift equity, but I don't know how they are wrestling with that with this particular decision.
Any other questions?
ACP's position as well.
Well, we would accept a hold on it.
Okay. What would you say to families who are currently facing, we heard from some parents who are currently experiencing very distressing delays, et cetera, that maybe feel like they can't wait for a solution? What would you say to those particular?
Those who are now experiencing difficulty,
Yes, that may not go to a magnet, may go to Louisville Ky, but whose buses are still, very, very late and they're missing instructional time.
I mean, my stance to them is that nothing is going to change this year anyway, right? Like nothing is proposed to change between the end of the year. And so the situation is going to be what it is from now through the end of May. And so what we are talking about is making sure that whatever change gets made in the fall is one that is best suited for all students or as many students as we possibly can stand. And so I certainly understand the frustration of parents who have experienced delays and who are dealing with transportation difficulties from the busing situation as current. But the answer to that is to not completely rip away opportunity for a whole group of other students. So we've got to figure out a way to balance those needs and fix them in a way that's equitable for as many students as possible.
thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming, and we look forward to keeping you apprised.